This program is brought to you by the Kentucky Small Business Development Center in Louisville. We provide the professional expertise, tools, and information necessary to help you make sound business decisions. Thank you to the U.S. Small Business Administration for co-sponsoring our program and to our host organization, the University of Kentucky. Contact us at 502-625-0123 to get started.
Welcome, friends. Welcome to another Toolkit Tuesday. Glad you guys could join us today. I'm Dave Etkin. I'm the director here at the Louisville Small Business Development Center. Happy Tuesday to you. And as always, just to make sure that everything's working well and you can hear and see us good, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a toolbar. And if you don't see one, just take your cursor down there, hover over it, it should pop up. There you'll see the chat feature. If you just click on that, you'll see the chat bar pop up, and just type in there to say hello and tell us your name and where you're joining from, and that way we can make sure everything's working. Sometimes we are technology challenged. There's Paul. Hey, Paul, how are you? I hope your project's going well. I was thinking about you the other day. Let's see, there's Caroline from Corbin, Kentucky. I think that's where the first Kentucky Fried Chicken was, right? Yes, indeed. All right. Way to go. There's Joni in Middlesboro and Everett and Lexington. Wow, we get people all over. Newport, Kentucky. It's a cool town. I was just up there the other day. Yeah. Oh, gosh, Paul, sorry to hear about all that. Hey, Shannon, Kelsey, good to see everybody today. So thanks for joining us. So as always, just a little reminder, we will be recording today, so we'll send that to you today as well as the slides. And then also, if you wouldn't mind, at the end of our presentation today, there'll be a little survey. Please fill that out because it's very helpful to us. And then as we go through the presentation today, if you have any questions or comments, now that we've all practiced with the chat feature, just put your questions and comments in there and we'll certainly get to them. And we have no set limit on time, so we'll be here all day if we need to be. So, because today is a very important day, because today's subject is probably the most important thing to consider in any business, and that is cash. And we all know that the weird thing about business is you can have a very profitable business on paper, but be very bankrupt and you run out of cash because you didn't have things kind of in line. So once again, we've got our great friend, David Pierce, here to talk a little bit about cash. David's a great resource. We're always so thankful to have him today. So how are you, Dave?
I'm wonderful, David. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to see you. I'm just going to let you share your screen and we'll jump right in, because I know everybody's just tired of hearing me ramble on, and let's get right to the meat of the matter. So I'm just going to give it to you, and let's dive right in, Dave.
Good deal. Appreciate it, David. Again, thank you all for having me. I love cash. I'm a old CPA, and I've kind of become the cash guy in the coaching world that I work in. So I really enjoy talking about this, and I always find this is a really important topic to everybody we talk with. So this is a real thrill for me to get to talk to you about it. Cash is king. You've heard that phrase before, but it is that much more important kind of in the economy that we're working in. So let me kind of just go through what we're going to cover today. If you got questions, obviously put them in the chat, or I'll give you my email. You can reach out. So I'll make sure that I'm a resource for you. And first of all, I just want to show you my beautiful caricature there. That's pretty important, but really the most important thing on this screen is my email. You can reach me at david@petracoach.com. You're going to write that down. And please reach out. I'm always happy to answer any questions or clarifications of something we covered or whatever. So please take that down, and this isn't a one and done. Just reach out anytime. I'll be glad to give you my assistance if I can. So what we're going to talk about today. First of all, you probably don't need this, but I always kind of like to build the case on why cash is so important. So I'm going to go over a couple of things there. I'm going to talk about some cash that's probably hidden in your business you may not be taking advantage of. We'll work through kind of explaining that and how you can find it. There's a way to improve the cash flow in your business, so you don't have to, you can turn that dollar over more often in your business and not have to rely on outside funding. So we're going to talk about that. And then creating some cash. There are ways that we can look at to play on some different levers within our business to create cash. It's called the Power of One, a little exercise I'll kind of walk you through to show you what that looks like. And hopefully from that, you'll be able to take away some objective ways you can begin to create new cash flow or additional cash flow in your business. And I kind of like to close this part with projecting, because I think cash flow, we don't do enough of looking forward looking in our cash flow. We often budget. We do a good job of budgeting, but that's more the income statement, which David mentioned. We might be very profitable, but not be very good at the cash side of our business. So I think you need to have a forward-looking cash flow as much as you do anything else in your business. So I'm going to walk through that, give you a little example of one that I worked through with a client of mine, and show the importance of it. And then I want to show you just a real quick, I want to show you there's a lot of other ways where you can create more cash by relying on kind of the exponential benefit of doing a bunch of different things, and the cumulative effect of those, how powerful it could be. So I want to show you that to helpfully encourage you to do some of these things that we're going to talk about in your business. So why is cash important? I've surveyed a bunch of talking heads out there, all the CNBC and the Federal Reserve and the New York Fed. Basically, they're all saying the same thing in different ways. It's really confusing. Some of them said we've been in recession for a while. Some are saying we're going into recession. Some of them say we don't know, but we think it's on the horizon. I mean, the Fed said, we're in March. We're going to enter recession later this year. So this would be later this year, and then it's going to be 2 years before we get out. The New York Fed has got one of the highest readings of our economy being in a recession, although some of us may not be feeling that yet because our economy is still pretty booming. This is interesting. They had PwC did a survey of 4,000 CEOs all over the world, and 73% of them are expecting to decline during this year. So I don't know what's going to happen or where we're at, although I know it's a bumpy economy. I deal with a lot of our clients, and some have had boom times and down times and backups. So it's really a bumpy time. It's not a growth time for where we don't see the end. We don't really know what's going on. And then the yield curves is telling us some things where it is inverted or has been inverted, which is an indicator of recession or some kind of a downturn. Technically, we are in a recession. We've actually been in it for a while. If you look at some of the old definitions of it, stock market declined by 20%, inflation at 40-year highs, and rising interest rates. So we're there. If we go by the old definitions, it's really been a kind of a weird economy because it continues to show some strength in spite of all these warning signs. So what's that mean? Well, a couple of things. Us as consumers, we've already feeling it. Gas prices are higher, food prices are higher. Maybe even we don't have the availability of some of the credit that we maybe had in the past. I was an old banker, so I know when you get into bumpy times like this, banks begin to look at their lines of credit and their borrowings out there, and some of them begin to pull back. So on the business side, you may have a little more challenging time to get lines of credit, or they're definitely going to be more expensive. Rates are 6-7% now. So the cost of borrowing has gone up. So in addition to rising prices and interest rates, you might even have some other supply chain things, which really happened about earlier this year. So all this says is that the bumpier the economy we're in, the bumpier the market we're in, cash is that much more important. Interesting here. If and when we're in a recession, whatever that looks like, it's a long time. It's a 12, 18, 24-month period. So we need to be prepared to deal with this. It's not going to happen. It's not going to start and end quickly. And again, I don't know where we're at in this, but I think it's going to be around for a while, given the rising rates. I think the Fed still continue to think about raising the rates. So who knows what's going to happen. So bottom line in, hopefully I made my case. That cash is just as or more important just about anything else you work on in your business from a financial perspective. So let's work on some ways to improve cash flow in your business. So undiscovered cash. There is cash hiding in your business, and it's hidden in inefficiencies. Let's talk about that. The problem with inefficiencies in your business is they don't show up readily anywhere. They're hidden. There's not a line item on your income statement that says cost of inefficient business, operations or processes. You just don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And so I did some research to find out, what is this cost? Well, the SBA, David's organization, said the inefficiencies could be $300 billion annually. I would suspect it's even more than that. So that's probably what they can somewhat measure. So I'd say it's a bigger number than that. And inefficiencies can come from a lot of different areas. If you got a bad culture that people don't want to be a part of, they don't want to work, they don't really enjoy where they're at, they're not going to be looking for ways to improve things from an efficiency standpoint. So culture affects it. Definitely poor processes, poorly designed, poorly documented processes, and then lack of attention to detail all affect cash flow. I've always thought this is pretty interesting. When you have a bad culture where people are coming and going, it costs you a lot. And depending on the level of employee, it costs you that much more. So if you had an $8 an hour, which is probably too low, if you had an $8 an hour worker you had to replace, it could cost you $3,500 from inefficiencies, from retraining, from startup, all that. And it goes up from there. A middle level could be 30 to 40 to 50% of their salary. And a top level person you have to replace, the cost of that could be 400% due to the inefficiency of spending money to hire somebody, bringing them in, training them, getting them up to speed to where the previous person was. So turnover, which is a bad culture, is an issue that causes a lot of inefficiency, ultimately translate to cash flow issues. So what are some cures? First of all, like I said, culture. You need to have a culture. If you have a place that people want to be a part of, they're going to do everything they can to make it a better place. They're going to do things to make it a more efficient place. They're going to enjoy working there. You're going to have the higher caliber person. You're going to attract those kind of people who tend to be better at what they do. So culture is a big impact on your cash flow and creating efficiencies or inefficiencies, depending on which side you're on. So culture is a source of inefficiency. Processes. All of your processes either are very efficient and they run well, or they're inefficient. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses, and I've been with a lot of companies in my coaching career, processes are not one of their strengths. They kind of just run things and hope they run right. And I'm gonna put a lot of time and effort into creating well-written, well-designed processes. So it is a big leak of cash in your business. And then paying attention to it, details. Once you built processes, are they following the process? Are we measuring the process? Are you looking for ways to improve the process? So let's talk about this. And again, if there's anything I'd recommend you do now, is look at all your processes. This is probably one of the most important and the most effective ways you can begin to improve profitability and cash flows by looking and improving your processes. So let me give you a few rules. All processes need to be in writing or some form. I always like to see video included, maybe pictures, maybe some audio, make them interesting and easy to see. If you just have processes written on a piece of paper, step by step, not as easy to digest and see. So it's always nice to have the process written so you understand it, obviously, but then maybe throw in some video to show some training on the process, maybe some audio, maybe just some pictures, make them full color so that the processes really come to life. So writing, video, audio, they've got to be well designed so you can see them that way. Second item, you got to have a way to measure the process. I see this so often. I got a great process. And I said, well, how do you know if it's running right? Well, I don't know. I really think it is, but I don't really know. So a process without KPIs, key performance indicators, ways to measure that process is not a good process. You've got to have ways to see if it's running the way you designed it. So you got to have a set of KPIs to measure how efficient that process is running. So in writing, video, audio, got to have a set of KPIs. And the third most important thing, this may be the most important thing, is you got to have accountability. We always recommend there only be one person over every process. And so they're kind of 24/7. That's in the back of their mind. Is that process running the way it's supposed to be? Are the KPIs indicating it is? If not, do I need to bring it to attention to somebody? So you need to have one person accountable over every process. So sales needs to have a person over the sales process. Collections, someone needs to be over collections and watching the KPIs. So writing, video, audio, KPIs to measure performance, and then accountability. Those three rules will make you have more efficient processes if you follow those. These are just some examples of processes in your business. You got product, maybe you're developing products, you're obviously acquiring customers in some form or fashion. So you got a sales or customer acquisition process. And then once you get them, how do you onboard them? Financial reporting, every business has that. So you've got a number of processes in your business. And a good way to kind of get a handle on it is to kind of create a chart of it. We call this the process accountability chart. And it's nothing more than a worksheet that you can do. It's got 3 columns. Let me explain the columns, and then I'll recommend what you do here. Is first column is this middle column, which is just the name of your process, whatever they are. Every business has a handful of key processes that they use to run their business. So what are yours? So you list those key processes, and then you sit back and say, hey, how do I measure those processes? These are your KPIs. So you list those KPIs by process over here. And then this is the accountable person. Actually name someone to be over that process and make sure they understand what the process is, how it works, and how we measure that. So when we first get with a new client, we give them a blank sheet and everyone in the team kind of prepares this on their own, and then they compare notes. And it's very interesting. It always comes up, sales. There'll be two or three different people that somebody thinks is the accountable person, and that's kind of violates the accountability rule. So if you're going to do this, and I recommend you do if you haven't done this already, is to kind of get a worksheet, put these 3 columns, and have everybody kind of on your team, maybe your senior team, fill it out, and then compare notes, and then ultimately get to one that you agree to. So if you see 3 people being accountable for a process, you got to change. So one person. You'll often find a process where nobody knows anybody that's accountable for it, or there's no KPIs. So good exercise to go through, take you an hour or so the first time to get through it. But ultimately, this will kind of give you the library of all the processes and who's accountable in the KPIs. And that is kind of your source to begin to track your processes. And this is a very simple example of what a process, an SOP, a standard operating procedure might be. Just a list of steps from step 1 to whatever step 9 or 10. This is the invoice payment process. So the invoice comes in, that's first step, and then a manager reviews it. And then there's an email sent to maybe the payables clerk to make the payment. And then if it's over a certain amount, it has to get reviewed by a VP. And if it's under a certain amount, it goes right to the payment process. This is exactly what you should have in every process in your business, some kind of a step-by-step. Again, I like video, that kind of thing, but some kind of a step-by-step list of all the steps in the process. And then you design KPIs to measure whether that's running properly. So it can be that simple, but you should have this for every process in your business. And how do you improve process? Now, let me just kind of walk you through this example of what we do. This is what I coach on every day is things like this. So how do I'm in with a client and they're having problems with their payroll process. Something's not working right. So here's what I would do is I'd kind of let them fill this out. And, what's the goal here is to deconstruct and rebuild a process in a better format, kind of the lean thing, always looking to make it better and better and better. So this example is a payroll process. The outcome is, weekly payments through ACH for all employees. You get some outputs, you get paychecks, you get monthly reports. And then here's all the steps that we could think of in this process. And the best way we found to kind of look at it and see where the bottlenecks or improvements could be made is to kind of write every step on a piece of paper or a sticky note, if you got those, and throw them up on the wall, and then organize them from step one to the last step. And then step back and then actually literally step back and look at it and have your team in the room and spend, an hour looking at this process and saying, where are the bottlenecks? Where are the inefficiencies? Where are the things we could eliminate or improve on? And in this example, they found 3 steps that could be automated, that could make the process more efficient. And how you might ask, well, how's that improve cash flow? Here's where it improves cash flow. By eliminating these steps, let's say we could save a half of an employee's time by eliminating these steps and automating this. So now you've got half of an employee that you can apply somewhere else that you may not have to hire for. So you save cash in the form of payroll by freeing up time from an employee that you might have to hire for at some future date. That's where the cash flow improvement comes from. By making your process more efficient, it takes less people, hopefully, in payroll, in this case, where you could free up a person to use somewhere else that you don't have to hire for a new position. So it ultimately comes through your cash flow. I recommend you do this like every quarter. Sit down, get your team in a room, whatever process is beginning to cause you some heartburn, break it down, look for ways to improve it. Almost always there's somewhere in this analysis, you find some way to improve a step. Here's the problem. If you don't do this regularly, processes begin to degrade over time. They just do. So you need to always kind of be looking at these on a periodic basis. We recommend like a quarterly rhythm of rebuilding a process every quarter. If you do 4 a year, in a couple of years, you've probably pretty much rebuilt all your processes again. So well worth the effort, and will improve ultimately cash flow in some form or fashion. All right, so that's hidden cash in your business. So how do we improve cash? Let me talk about that. Improving what's already in your business. How do I use that cash more efficiently in my business? There's a concept called the cash conversion cycle. And simplistically, what that concept is how long does it take from when I spend $1, either in payroll or maybe inventory to build a product, to when that dollar eventually comes back after I've made the sale of the product or service and I collect the receivable. That's your cash conversion cycle. And it's just an accounting calculation based on receivables turnover and payables turnover and inventory turnover affects that too. So it's important that you measure your cash conversion cycle. So here's just an example. This is actually was a scaling up client, not of ours, but of one of the coaches called Williams Plumbing. This is an older 2018, but Williams Plumbing. And I think they were into plumbing, but I think they built big projects. So their timeline on building a project and collecting was very long. It wasn't like they were selling widgets. So they were a production of some kind of a project base. Well, look at this. Let me just explain what this chart is telling us, and I think you'll understand the value of this. The bottom chart or the bottom line is prior year, and the top line is the current year, let's say. And it's measuring how many days does it take from when I spend that dollar to when I get that dollar back. So last year, it was taking them 164 days from when they spend the first dollar to when they ultimately collected it. That's pretty long. Most businesses, it's not near this long, but this is a good example. 164 days. That's long. I'd want to improve that if I could. Here's the problem. In the current year, that cash conversion cycle went to 185 days. So it extended by 21 days. So why is that important? Here's why it's important. because of the extension of the days of collections and when they ultimately got the money back, they had $1.8 million of less cash flow flowing through their business in the current period than they did last year. So all things being equal, they would have to have that money from another source, maybe from a line of credit or an investor or something. So the goal of managing your cash conversion cycle is to make it as short as possible so you can use that same dollar over and over and over in your business. If I sell something and I collect it every 30 days, I get to turn that dollar over 12 times during the year to reinvest back in my business. Whereas if I turn it over every 60 days, I only get to turn it over six times. So this is using the existing cash flow better and more effectively in your business by shortening this period. So we're always going to be looking for ways to get this working capital cash conversion cycle to be shorter. So how do we do that? Again, as a coach, I've always got a way to help improve that. So this is a little exercise that we use with our teams when we're working with them. And I'll kind of explain it to you. Again, you can do this. You don't need this worksheet, but let me explain it to you. We found there's three primary ways to improve your cash conversions. First of all, ways to shorten it. How do I shorten that cycle time? How do I get my receivables in collect earlier? How do I defer my payments a little longer? Shorten the cycle. Or you can eliminate mistakes. That seems to be a big issue with extension of a cash conversion cycle, mistakes happening and somewhere in a process. Or you can change the business model. So let me give you an example of each of those that might hit home. These sections here are just kind of 4 cycles. You got a sales cycle, you got a production cycle, you got delivering or getting the product or service out cycle, and you got the payment cycle. These are kind of 4 cycles that affect the cash conversion cycle overall. And these are the 3 areas. So let me give you an example, then I'll explain how to do the exercise. First of all, what's a shortened cycle time? Well, the case that we use is called Dell Computer. When they first started Dell Computer, they would take an order and they would build the product, they'd ship the computer, and then they'd bill. So their cash conversion cycle was 30 something days, I believe it was, before they got their money back after they shipped and built the computer. Well, somebody along the way said, well, when somebody orders a computer online, why don't we just take a credit card and collect that payment up front, and we don't even have to begin to build the computer until we got our money. And that's exactly what they did. They started charging you, the consumer, when you bought a computer from them up front. I paid for it in full up front with a credit card, and they didn't even buy the parts to build the computer until after they had the order. So their conversion cycle went from a plus 30 to like a minus 10, 11, 12 days. So they actually got their money up front and they could use to build your computer. You were paying for them to build your computer. Big improvement. They shortened their cycle time, actually went on negative. They got their money before they even had to build the product. Not always, can't always do that, but if you got the capability to accept credit cards and you're not, that's one way you could shorten the cycle time. Eliminate mistakes. The example here is a good example of mistakes happening is medical billing. Doctors' offices, when they bill insurance companies for a service, if they don't have the exact code down to the 10th digit correct, for the service or procedure that the insurance company is going to reimburse them for, insurance company they don't call the doc, say, doc, hey, let's work through this. They just send the invoice back and say, correct this. We're not going to pay you to correct it. Here's the other thing. They often set on it for 30, 60 days before they send it back. So you can go from a 30-day cash conversion cycle to 90 to 120 days pretty quick if you're not billing correctly with these invoices. So that's a mistake that can occur. You may have mistakes in your billing process that you need to look at and eliminate. The other way is to change your business model. An example here is Costco. They were the first warehouse business that collected a membership fee before Sam's did. So they charged me to come and buy their products, and it became a very profitable line in their business. In fact, their profits pretty much equal their membership fees, meaning they sell most of their products at kind of a break even and make most of their money on the membership fee. So that's changing the business model. So not everybody can do that as well. So here's how you use this thing. Again, explain the exercise, just get a worksheet kind of similar to this and have everybody brainstorm in your group How could I shorten the cycle time? And let them list their items on here. How could I eliminate some mistakes? And let us list some ideas. And then get them all together and confer and talk and discuss. And you'll find 2 or 3 that are worth pursuing with a kind of a group thing. So do it individually and then discuss them all as a group and come up with some ideas to work on. Again, if you find a couple of ways to improve your cash conversion cycle, every day you shorten that things means you've got that dollar a little bit earlier to turn over in business. So that's using the cash flow that's already in your business more effectively. So you're not creating more cash, you're just creating a way to turn it over more quickly. Very important. And if that thing continues to extend, you're going to have less and less cash flow in your business. All right, so let's create some cash flow. We have an exercise, and again, you can do this. Let me explain what we do and where this comes from. I've been in, hundreds or thousands of board meetings over my career. And often at the beginning of the year, the CEO stands up and says, team, we're going to raise prices 25% this year. And by the way, I need you to cut costs 25%. And everybody looks at him and says, yeah, nothing happens because it's just too big, too bold, too sweeping to make these big changes like this. So what the Power of One does says, there's got to be a better way. Maybe we can affect a lot of different levers, we call them, within our business in a much smaller scale and still achieve a big outcome. So small changes can result in big outcomes. So we identified 7 areas in your business that we can model that you can use to begin to determine if it's something you want to work on. So let me show you what those levers are, and then I want to show you our tool to show you how it works. So these are the 7 levers: pricing increases, volume increases, cost of goods sold reduction, overhead reduction, and then reduction in the receivables, inventory, and payable days. All 7 of these affect cash flow. The top 4 are only profits. So our tool does both of those things. So let me show you what our tool is. This is, this is what it looks like. You've got this column would be cash flow, and this column would be profitability. So you put your current cash flow for the year in here, your current profitability for the year in here, and then you model these changes over in these 7 levers to see what the impact. And that's what our tool does. So let me show you what our tool looks like, so you can see how it works. So then we're back into the Williams Plumbing, and this is a real company. So let's just show you what this looks like. This is our Power of One tool that we use with our clients, and it kind of just helps drive home the value of this. So here's Williams Plumbing. They actually had a negative cash flow of $3.2 million in this year we're looking at, and a positive profit. Kind of goes to what David said earlier. You can be very profitable, but you may be negative. You may not be very good at cash flow. Very important. So in their business, they were running negative cash flow because they weren't collecting the money as quickly as they were recognizing the income or the revenues from it on an accrual basis, I assume. So this is their current position for a year. These are the 7 levers over here. And we model initially, what's the 1% change or the 1-day change in these? And here's what it does, pretty significant. If we were able to affect these very small changes in each of these levers, we would improve here cash flow by $1 million and profits by almost $1 million. Pretty significant with these very small changes. So we go in and we sit down with the team, say, well, they'll say, well, we can't do all of these, and legitimately we can't do all of these, but let's think through what we think we could do, or maybe make it worthwhile. Well, the team may say, well, we haven't raised prices in a couple of years, so I think there's probably room for a 3% increase in prices. If we do that, I don't think we're going to be able to impact volume much. So we'd measure a volume in decrease or not much change in the volume. And well, this thing's not working exactly right, but anyway, it attempts to measure those changes in different areas. And with this tool, we could go in and measure what these changes would be. And then the team could sit back and say, well, I think the price increase has merit. Let's work on that. And let's develop some plans to attempt to implement new prices or increase prices. And then we'll measure the impact of this. What this exercise does, it kind of adds objectivity to this process of changing these levers versus just the gut. Often the team just says, I think we need to raise prices. I think it'll be good. So unfortunately, that doesn't always work. So this tool gives us that. Let me kind of go back to the spreadsheet here. So this is the tool. We used to do it manually, but you can do this. You can set a little worksheet up and model these changes in the levers and measure that, and then begin to choose a couple of them that you feel like you're going to work on that would improve cash flow and profitability. So the point here is you can make some very small changes, manageable changes in your business that could have a dramatic impact on cash flow. And this kind of builds some objectivity into that process. If you're concerned about pricing, this is kind of the guru of pricing, Herman Simon. There's a book called The Confessions of a Pricing Man. He talks about how pricing affects and how we make pricing decisions, and how some of these pricing decisions do not necessarily impact the customer attitude on buying, on purchasing. So a good book to read if you're a little concerned about it, you don't really know about pricing and how it might affect you and how it affects the consumer's thinking. A good resource there. So good resource. All right, let's talk about projecting cash flow. Just put the points here. Yeah, and I'll give you an example of this. Cash flow, first of all, cash flow forecasting doesn't have to be complex. You can use a spreadsheet. I'm going to show you an example of a spreadsheet here. And a good way to do, if you've never worked on a cash flow forecast, is just take one product or service and start from when you produce it and walk it through the cash cycle of when you sell it and you collect the cash. Just do one product or service and see what it looks like. That will help you understand how cash flows through your business if you've never done it before. And based on that one transaction that you've looked at through the process, you'll begin to develop some assumptions about your cash flow that you can apply on a broad case to your budgets. And again, I'll show you how that works. And ultimately, you want to automate this so that you have reports that you can look at periodically on a very timely basis. But the first way to do it, if you've ever done it, is just sit down and do it manually on a spreadsheet and then measure how that works. So again, use a spreadsheet. So let me show you a spreadsheet that I actually used with a member or a client of mine. This is the spreadsheet that I use with them. These are not their numbers. Let me tell you the story here, how impactful it was. I had a client that was a $600 million revenue client, and they'd been around in business for years, I mean, decades. So we had been coaching them for a couple of months, and the CFO called me one day, said, David, said, hey, something unusual happened. The first time in our history that I'm aware of, we had to call the bank and draw on our line of credit to meet payroll in the last 2 weeks. That's never happened before. So my first question was, well, what did your cash flow forecast tell you about that? And they said the cash flow what? So this is a very established company, $600+ million in revenues, had never had a cash forecasting model. They didn't know what they didn't know. So I said, well, you need to have one. You're growing this business, and this is going to continue to be an issue for you from a cash flow standpoint. You need to be aware of where your cash looks like going forward. So I went and found the spreadsheet somewhere, and we sat down and we took one of their products and we tracked it through the cash collection cycle. So, and then we applied some assumptions. So the way we did it, once we did that one and got an understanding of how the cash flowed, is we took their budget. They had a 12-month budget, monthly 12-month budget, and they had these categories that would be their income statement categories. I said, well, we need to convert those to the cash equivalent of that. So if you sell your products on credit, so we need to know when we're going to collect these. So this line item was collection from receivables. So what it told me is let's say month 2, they collected $55,000 and they billed on 30-day terms. So this 55 were the sales that they had in month 1, they collected in month 2. And if they sell it on cash, then they sold these in month 1 and they collected in month 1. So you got to think through all of your line items in the budget that hopefully you've got and say, what is the cash flow equivalent of that line item? If you bill on 30-day terms, then likely the sale you make this month is going to be collected next month. and you spread that over 12 months, just like you would your budget, and you begin to measure what the cash flow would be. Here's where this really comes in. It's pretty cool. So this company, we did this for this company. And every month, this line item down here, this worksheet showed that they were going to run short $46,000 every month. They were growing, and this is not unusual when you have a company that's growing. This cash begins to run behind the growth. So what they did at the beginning of the year, when we modeled this for the next 12 months, they said, well, we may need about $500,000 in borrowings to support our growth. So they made sure that they had a line of credit or they had funding available to meet this future prospective need they might have. Better to know now at the beginning of the year than to get halfway through the year and find out, man, I'm out of cash. And also the old banker in me, I loved for a company that could come and show me a forecast that they put together. I'm more apt to look at them, that they understand their business, and more apt to approve their lending than that they just come say, I think I need some money. So this can be invaluable. And obviously you want to then begin to attempt to improve on what's going to happen going forward. So this gives you an idea of what it might look like. And the way to use this is to run some scenarios, a good scenario, an expected scenario, maybe a bad scenario. Where this would have really come in handy is during the pandemic, if some of our hospitality companies we work with had kind of run a worst case scenario, which I don't know if you'd have ever modeled that worst case, but if they'd modeled a 50% downturn in business, what did that do to their cash flow? They would have been better prepared to survive the pandemic effect that happened to them. So use your forecast to model some scenarios so you're prepared, and be prepared to live with worst case if you had to. So this is where you can help you be a better manager of your business. So it doesn't have to be sophisticated. You can find these worksheets anywhere all over the web, and they don't have to be sophisticated. And I recommend, if you've never done one, is to do it manually, and then ultimately come to an automated so you can use it, be more effective using it that way. So that's forecasting. Those are kind of the primary things. You're going to find cash that's hidden in inefficiencies. You're going to use your cash better, the cash conversion cycle, and you're going to create more cash, like the power of one example, generate more cash with what you're already doing in your business. And then cash forecast kind of lets you know what your cash looks like going forward. So last thing I want to hit on real quick is what we didn't talk about is the cumulative exponential effect of making all these changes and what it can do for your business. I always kind of like to show this demo. It's kind of interesting to see. We work now, I think there's up to 22 different areas that we work with companies on to help them improve cash flow and profitability. So it kind of will just walk you through the power of compounding. And this is often very eye-opening, but got a company here. And this is kind of the lead gen to profits phase, cycle that you would go through. Bring leads in, convert so many, close so many, that kind of thing. So let me just walk you through that. Here's your current situation. This company has 1,200 leads, and ultimately that generates $247,000 in profit, 20% conversion rate, 25% closing rate. They retain 500 customers every year, so they have a total of 560. So just a typical kind of the funnel thing that most businesses have in some form or fashion. So let's assume that there's a 10% increase in each of these areas, 10% more leads, you're better at converting, you have a better closing rate. So what does that look like? It's amazing. It's not 10% improvement. It's pretty significant. So we model this 10% changes in these 7 areas here in this model, results in new profitability of $386,000, which is not a 10% improvement in profitability. It's a 56% improvement in profitability. So the cumulative effect of small changes within your business can be much more dramatic than the small changes you're having to implement. We often find that 40% is not an unusual thing to do if you're managing it properly. So what does 40% do? Again, not 40% after you go through in those areas, a 288% improvement in profitability. So the point is, we can make small manageable changes, and the cumulative exponential effect of those changes throughout our cycle, throughout our funnel cycle, can make a dramatic improvement. We often say 10%, it's not going to be a big impact. Well, it is when you do it across the board and you get the exponential impact. And again, we see 40% gains a lot of times when people get serious and intentional about these areas. And often you can do it without spending more money on marketing. You can just reallocate more properly to a more efficient way to use that dollar. So oftentimes you can achieve this without having to spend more or a lot more money to get that end result. So I just want to show you the power of all these things we talked about in this presentation earlier. If we rely on the exponential impact of these things, it's often much greater than, say, that 1% when you compound that effect, and well worth it. But everything we talked about today affects both profitability and cash flow. And we use a term called growing broke. And just like David mentioned early on, you can have a very profitable company, but especially if you're growing and maybe costs are increasing, you can be cash poor. So you really need to have a way to measure all these areas in your business, improve cash flow within your business, and then rely on the exponential impact of making these small changes. So here's these are just 22 areas that we found. If we work on these areas, you don't work on all of them at the same time, but these 22 areas, if you focus your attention and develop and become more effective at these areas, will help you improve cash flow and profitability. Some of these are additional products, or increasing the cost per sale, or the sale per customer, improving the number of leads. All these all together, we coach companies on to help them improve. And ultimately, these very significant. Often that 40% I mentioned increases in profitability and cash flow. You can do that too, and you should be doing that in your business as well. All right, so that's pretty much the presentation, but I do have an ask for you, and I'll give you something for this ask. I have part of what we do is education, and we've written a book. I've got a book called the Profit Maximizer Playbook that outlines all the, I don't know if you can see it, that outlines all these, some of these tools that we use. So I've got a book that we do. Well, I'm working on a new book that expands these tools. And the publisher requires or wants us to go out and talk to industries, review those, all those potential ways to improve those strategies, and ask the industry how effective it might be in their industry, what the dollar impact could be on that industry, and kind of get some opinions, and often we get quotes and things. So I need to interview companies in their industry and kind of review those processes. And the way it would work is I'd sit down, we'd look at 3 or 4 processes. I'd ask you as a business owner or the business person in that industry, say, what do you think that would affect? Could that be used in your industry? Could it have a significant impact? What kind of impact? And often get very good insights. This strategy won't work in my business. So it helps us validate the strategies that we write about to educate the public about ways to improve profitability and cash flow. So we do this through an interview process, and it's strictly what it is. It's not a sales process. I'd talk about some of the strategies, ask your opinion, ask your insights on what it could be worth to a business in that industry. And then we record that down as, validated in this industry. And we often get quotes from you, the business owner, that we sometimes put in the books. So my thank you, if you would volunteer to be interviewed. It's about a 30 to 45-minute process, depending on the dialogue. I'll give you a copy, an ebook copy of this book, which outlines, certain strategies that you can apply within your business. And I'll even give you, if you wanted, a Power of One assessment where I would drop your company into our tool. And we could walk through this. What if? What could we do to raise prices 3% or raise volume 3%? And what impact that might be? I'd be happy to do that. We do this for our members, and it's at a price. So this is going to be complimentary in exchange for your time for the interview. So I would appreciate it if someone would like to do that. I'd appreciate your time. In exchange for your time, I'll give you something I know is very valuable. So what are your action steps today? First of all, pick a process. Put it in writing, have KPIs, and have an accountable person. I would start there. That you need to do this if you're not doing this already. You need to have efficient, well-written, well-designed process that you measure and someone's watching. Then look at your cash conversion cycle and ask your question, how can I shorten the time from when that money goes out to when it comes back? Shorter is better. So if it's 45 days today, how can I get it to 30 days? And if you don't know how to compute it, talk to your accountant, your CFO. It's just accounting calculations. to convert that to calculate that cycle. So it's not rocket science, and there are formulas to do it. So make sure you get it calculated, watch it and measure it periodically, and then look for ways to shorten that cycle. Then maybe do that power of one. A good time to do that is you're thinking about the next year. What are ways I can improve cash flow and profitability of making small changes in these different levers within your business? What's a 3% change in pricing do for me? What's a 1% change in volume do for me? Those things are very achievable in most cases, as opposed to these 25% improvements or 25% sales price recommend. Those kind of things just don't, it's hard to get your team to buy into them. So look at power of 1%, 10% changes, smaller changes. Create a 12-month forecast. I can't encourage you to do that any stronger than I already have. It is so important. One thing I didn't mention is create your forecast, run it for about 3 months, and then look back. How accurate was that forecast? Did it reveal a true picture of what my cash flow really was going to look like? And let me tell you this, it's not going to be exact. I always say, if I can get about 80%, where it's 80% dependable, you got a pretty good forecast, because things are going to change every day. It's going to make that forecast as you originally started or created a little inaccurate. But that's okay. As long as it gives you a result that's about 80% accurate, you can use it to model and manage your cash flow going forward. So don't look for perfection, and always look back to see how well it's doing. By looking back, you'll find ways to tweak that model to improve your assumptions. And within 6 months or so, you'll have a pretty good model. And ultimately, you want to get it automated, so you don't have to hand do that every time, so you'll make it use it. Then don't forget about the power of compounding in your business. Often we think a 3% change is not, is it really worth, ticking off my customers? Well, it might be worth it when you consider the compound effect of a 3% change here, 3% change here, 3% change here. The compound effect is not 3%. It's often 10, 15, 20%. Yeah, it's more worth pursuing these things when you realize the benefit of making several small changes and the compound effect of those. And I showed you what a 10% change could do. It wasn't a 10% improvement. It was much greater than that. And then if you would be willing to kind of walk through this interview process, where I'll go through 3 or 4 of the strategies, which you'll learn something that you can probably apply in your business, by the way. So it won't be just a waste of time. And then I'll send you the ebook. And if you want me to do the Power of One, I'd be glad to do that. I appreciate that. But I need to do that to get this new book through our publisher as we validate those things. So with that being said, again, I want to make sure you've got my email, david@petracoach.com. So if anything we talked about today, you want more clarification, you had a question about, please reach out. My life is about helping others be better in their businesses or on a personal basis. So if I can do that, then I'm living my purpose. So I appreciate that. If you want to reach out. So david@petracoach.com is a way to get hold of me. Please reach out. I don't care what the question is, if you think I can help you with that. So let me get back. David, I'm finished. I don't know if you got any questions or comments, but we got a little more time here if you want to go through some of that.
Yeah. Well, I personally have one question. Do you like the action steps? Do you prefer that you do those action steps in order?
Not necessarily. Kind of look at what you know. If you got good processes and that's not as big a concern, obviously don't spend a lot of time initially. I'd say look at all those areas, pick the ones that might be most impactful. For example, if your cash conversion cycle you find is 180 days, you need to work on. So not order, but a good way to do it is I do believe you need to have strong processes. So if that's a real big weakness in your company, that needs focus. But no magic order to that.
Okay. I think that also the Power of One tool is really cool tool, and I think that personally that always if you do that first, then it kind of gives you oh man, if I just work through this other stuff, this is gonna be great, Yeah,
takes a little time. Tell you what the Power of One does too. It builds confidence in your team. When you can show them what a 1% change may, they'll get behind it. Versus just say, hey, go raise prices, go do it. It's puts objectivity into it. If they see that a 1% increase in prices can improve profits by 30%, they'll get behind it
Mhm.
versus just trusting my gut. I think it's going to help us, but I don't really know what it's going to do. So it adds some objectivity in that decision making and gets your team more inclined to support that. So
Yeah. It also reminds me of this book I read a while back ago. I think it was called Little Bets, but the idea is like if you make small changes and instead of betting your farm on some big thing, you can afford a few mistakes here and there, but overall, if you're directionally correct, then you'll have a positive effect.
Yeah, the numbers will be different, but they will directionally will be in where you're moving toward. Correct. So
yeah,
I love that tool. I bet I've done over the last couple of months, I've probably done 40 or 50 of those with some of our clients. I don't leave one where they don't all come away with some ideas to work on in it. PowerPoint. It's just powerful to look at things that way. So
yeah. Great. So if folks, if you guys have any questions or comments, just put them in the chat there and we'll be happy to get to them. So it looks like Paul's got a brewery he's in the process of running. So
yeah, just if you'll just email me, Paul, and then we'll get connected, and then we can work out what's a good time for us. So great, that's great.
Yep, just sent the email. All right, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I don't see any questions at the moment, but so you've been doing this a long time. I mean, you I know you've seen a lot. So what are some of your success stories on using this power of one? What's something?
I actually had a client. We had a member. We call them members. A client in Colorado who had a salesman. He knew he just wasn't performing at the level that he went in, and he always fought him on raising prices. The sales guys don't want to see prices. They're worried about losing customers. So he did the CEO did the power of one. He realized that a 1% or a 2% change in prices was going to be dramatic. So he had the fortitude at that point, an objective perspective, to go to the salesperson and say, we're raising prices and here's why. And he basically felt confident that it was worth making that call, when previously he was a little reticent to do it with this salesperson, because the salesman, you're going to lose everybody's going to run off if you raise prices. Well, he decided it was worth it. And the other thing, the Power One allows us to model off if there's a volume increase. So let's say I raise prices 5%, but we think that might run off 2%. You can model that, and often you're still better off on a net basis to maybe lose those marginal customers to get the more profitable customers. So it helps you think through that process. So that was a big success story. And he may have even replaced the sales guy because he knew he wasn't the one that was. So that helped him make that decision more objectively than just the gut thing.
Yeah, I've run that model too. And two things that I've noticed is that, number one, the customers you lose are the ones you're happy that are gone.
Absolutely.
And then, if you increase just pull some numbers out of the air, if you increase your prices 10% and you'd have to lose 30% of your entire customers to get where you would be back to where you'd be before you even got rid of
David, that's so eye-opening. I could lose 30% of my customer base and still be the same with that increase. And then you go out and work on ways to not lose those customers, But yeah, it's pretty eye-opening when you look at it that way. We often just say, I can't raise prices, I'm going to lose customers. Well, what's the impact of that? Well, this helps you make a better informed decision.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's always a fun exercise. So, well, it looks like we don't have any questions. We're at the top of the hour.
Well, I know I overwhelmed with some things. Please reach out. Anything I can help you with. I can, if you want a copy of the forecast, that's just an Excel spreadsheet. If you want to reach out, I could send you a copy. That's, we took it off the web somewhere, so we didn't create that. So it's just a spreadsheet. So if you think that might be helpful, let me know. But I'm here. Here's a resource as always. So let me know I can help.
And I'll just say and put words in your mouth, Dave, but if you're out there thinking, well, my company's not appropriate to talk to Dave about this, that's not true. But please reach out and use the resources, and I know Dave's here to help. So
absolutely. All right.
Okay, well, thanks,
Thank you
everybody, and
all.
don't forget our survey. You'll see it pop up here in just a second. And Dave, thanks as always. I really appreciate what you do.
Good deal.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks
So,
for the invite. Appreciate it. You all have a great day and let me know how I can help.
okay, and Janet, thanks for everything you do back there.
Have a good day.
Okay.